This video will be a character overview and analysis of 8th Prince Salé-salé, Hui-gu-ro. Initially, I'll provide an outline of the prince by going into his princely privilege and personality. I'll follow this up with an analysis of his guardian spirit beast, GSB for short. Afterwards, I'll go into the circumstances that led to his demise. And finally, I'll finish up by giving my opinion on how good of a king he would have made had he somehow won the succession war. Let's get into it. 8th Prince Salé-salé is, as you can imagine, the 8th official offspring of King Nasubi and the only child of 5th Queen Swinko. Now, him being the 8th out of 14 children and his mother being the 5th out of 8 queens may make you think that he's at about average or slightly below average in terms of overall princely power and privilege. But that's not really the case. As in, even though he is one spot below, 9th Prince Halkenberg actually reasonably outscales Salé-salé with regards to overall princely status due to how highly ranked his moms, i.e. both the biological first queen Unma and the adoptive second queen Dozol, are when compared to 5th queen Swinko. While she definitely does have a certain amount of power and influence, Swinko can only keep tabs on and personally maneuver against queens 6 through 8, and consequently princes 10 through 14. In a sense, making her the most pathetic among the queens, since all she can hope to do is bully and make moves against the youngest and most vulnerable princes who, in theory at least, can't be considered as even half-serious succession war contenders. Back to Salé-salé. Let's now go into his character. 8th Prince Salé-salé can best be described as a larger-than-life figure, both in physical stature and personality. Seriously, his height, which among the princes is second only to 1st Prince Benjamin, who is himself equal in height to potentially either the tallest or second tallest human in the series, namely Boto by fricking Gigante, paired with the 8th Prince's girth, which is unmatched by any prince, and surpassed only by a handful of characters in the series, make him one of the physically largest people we've seen. His personality, and by a closer extension than can be considered advisable, his libido, were just as substantial. Apart from the departure ceremony when he was on stage with all his siblings, he is basically never shown not surrounded by a personal harem of beautiful women. The guy was ruled by his libido to such a fundamental extent that it also shaped the mechanics of his GSB. But more on that in a bit. His wanton pursuit of carnal pleasure was not in the least bit helped by the fact that Salé-salé was a spoiled brat among spoiled brats, owing to his mother's coddling of him. While she would chastise him for his unseemly behavior, Swinko was never shown doing anything to actually discourage it. On the contrary, she even told her big baby of a prince that she would do what she could on her end to win the succession war for him, which doesn't serve to reinforce his laid-back, no fucks given behavior whatsoever. Just like the majority of his siblings that aren't either borderline toddlers or literal babies, Salé-salé was successfully inculcated by his mother to believe that he would inevitably be king, as was her queenly duty. This unwavering belief manifests differently in all princes that exhibit it, with Salé-salé's personal brand seemingly being tied to his charisma and perceived irresistible likability. As in, I believe that his status as Kakin royalty and the fact that he was Swinko's only child gave Salé-salé the impression that the world revolved around him. To a degree, most other princes would find narcissistic even for them. Just like 12th Prince Momose deluded herself into equating her mother's lack of attention and concern for her safety as a recognition of Momose's kingly potential, Salé-salé came to equate his desire for something as the inevitable achievement of it. Everything, from power and influence to valuables and women, was always handed to him on a silver platter by, first and foremost, his mother, but also their servants, and I'm sure if necessary, soldiers. As such, for him, wanting something was the first and final step in achieving it. The only real factor was time, which he'd gladly spend engulfed in carnal pleasure, hence why he was never in any rush. No real agency was ever required on his part. The fifth queen's doting of him, paired with his princely status, led Salé-salé to believe that his sheer personal charisma, confidence, and talents, once properly revealed in a context that would allow them all to properly shine, would have everyone immediately recognize him as king. Simple as. The narcissistic lardass actually thought to win over the world and single-handedly win the succession war with a rap performance we've never seen him practice once. I'm confident that the only real practicing he did regarding the concert was imagining how following his magnificent performance, Big Bro Benji would just barely manage to push through the crowd of beautiful women trying to swarm the stage, while probably just barely containing his impulse to enact martial law, and come on to congratulate his little brother as he's come to inform him that he and the other princes have renounced their claim on the throne and formally recognized the 8th prince as the next rightful king of Kakin. Somewhere between there and him actually ascending the throne is when Benjamin's soldiers Yushohi's ability finished its job, I'm sorry to say. Let's now talk about his GSB. Salé-salé's guardian spirit beast is a diffusive induction type manipulator that takes the form of a spherical creature with no distinguishing features apart from the dozens of mouths of various sizes that cover its surface. While it was never confirmed, I believe that the slow burn activation condition and proliferation effects are what give the guardian spirit beast the designation of a diffusive induction type. The aforementioned mouths intermittently exhale a white smoke within a 7-meter radius of the prince, with the rate of the exhalation being tied to the prince's libido, the continued inhalation of which serves as the condition for its manipulation effect to trigger. A white substance ejected from an orifice tied to the prince's libido that needs to be ingested so as to increase a person's goodwill towards him. Yeah, I have a feeling if Hunter x Hunter wasn't published in Shonen Jump, that Salé-salé's GSB would look just a little bit different. On a completely unrelated note, I think I know what Salé-salé's favorite fruit is. The effect in question is an emotion manipulation effect that over time erodes antipathy or apprehension a person may have towards the prince, instead replacing them with a gradually increasing amount of goodwill, loyalty, and admiration. For those that are already predisposed towards the prince, the process takes about 8 hours, while it takes closer to 70 for those with no such proclivities, i.e. those with a neutral disposition towards him. It's unknown how long someone who is actively hostile towards Salé-salé would take to erode and win over such as Benjamin's soldiers, but I think it's fair to assume it's at a minimum double the time of neutral parties. Once the emotion manipulation is complete and the individual has 100% come aboard the Salé-salé party bus, a miniature clone of the GSB will appear above their heads to intermittently spread the Salé-salé agenda. This is where the GSB's true potential and nature as a diffusive induction type manipulator come to shine. See, while a coercive manipulation effect would generally require a fair bit of aura to pull off, particularly if doing so offers other benefits such as creating a clone of the GSB to continue proliferating its effects at tremendous ranges and without direct risk to the main body, the condition that it requires about 8 hours for the manipulation to be complete in individuals who are already partial to the prince and 70 in those that are neutral serves as a potent enough condition for significantly decreasing the aura toll such a powerful effect would generally necessitate. In addition to this temporal restriction / condition, both the smoke and clones are visible to Nen users. And judging by the fact that Rihan, first Prince Benjamin's soldier tasked with neutralizing Salé-salé's GSB, just casually blew the smoke away and didn't really worry about inhaling it while having to stand in his proximity for hours on end, it seems rather easy to avoid. And thank God for that. Knowing what it's an analog for, I wouldn't want to ingest it either. Just before Rihan activated his ability, Predator, to do its thing and neutralize the prince's GSB, he mentioned how the guardian spirit beast's lack of any obvious self-defense features is a product of the prince's over-reliance on his mother. While that's definitely partially the case, it's also, I believe, a product of a hyperinflated sense of his own charisma and likability, since I'm sure he'd find it absolutely unthinkable that anyone would actually want to do him harm. Now, this ability's surprising focus on long-term nationwide domination is, unlike with Third Prince Zheng-Lei, not a product of any kind of real forethought on Salé-salé's part. The only thing that Bozo cared about was getting his rocks off between meals. But once again, a direct product of his perceived sense of greatness and worthiness to be the next king. See, the true purpose of his GSB was to bridge the gap between Salé-salé's delusional perception of himself and actual reality, or rather to align the two. With this ability, people would actually see him for how he sees himself, in all his overinflated greatness. The ability would, in theory at least, actually allow for an absurd situation like First Prince Benjamin publicly renouncing his right to the throne in Salé-salé's favor to take place, with enough people infected. By the way, scoot over, Morena, this is the ability truly worthy of the name Contagion. Any action or inaction, no matter how asinine or self-defeating on Salé-salé's part, would be perceived as the mark of the greatest ruler Kakin ever had. If this should tell us anything, it's that on some level, deep down, the 8th Prince was fully aware of the discrepancy between his actual and imagined selves. Let's now very quickly go over how he died. While he wasn't responsible for actually landing the killing blow, Rihan, through the use of his Predator, was able to neutralize the prince's GSB, thus leaving him entirely defenseless as he had no Nen users as part of his personal guard. In order to accomplish this, he first needed to understand the nature and mechanics of the GSB, so as to create the perfect counter for it. The fact that the prince's GSB was always active instead of remaining largely dormant or hidden, such as 5th Prince Tubepa's, as well as that its effects were rather obvious, unlike 3rd Prince Zheng-Lei's, made it the perfect target for someone with Rihan's ability and skill set. Then, once that was said and done, he switched places with Yushohi, who used his ability, especially crafted for assassinations, namely Stand By Me, to finally kill the 8th Prince. By the way, I always found it really funny that Rihan contacted HQ to swap him out for Yushohi the instant his job was done. Now, why would that be funny, you might ask? The man's simply pragmatic and efficient, right? Well, yeah, that's guaranteed to be the actual reason. But my funny headcanon is that Rihan just wanted out of that room and to have the prince killed as soon as possible. Why? Well, apart from the room being an absolute pigsty and the loud music that was blaring all the time, there's also the fact that all of Salé-salé's guards, including Rihan, had to listen to and potentially even watch the prince, perform. And I don't mean his rap. The one guard that was affected by his GSB even complimented the prince on his virility, meaning that this was a common occurrence. Screw the sounds and visuals, pun not intended. Imagine the smell. Yeah, revenge is a dish, and Salé-salé a glutton. On a darker note, I don't believe all those women were struggling so hard to save the prince out of a genuine sense of love or duty. Chances are that, considering the extremely suspicious circumstances of his death, along with the ban on contraception for members of the royal family, meant that the girls were attempting to save themselves as much as the prince. Finally, let's now discuss how good of a king Salé-salé would have made had he, somehow, won the succession war. Well, Rihan himself put it best, so I'll just quote him. In short, Salé-salé's Nen beast manipulates goodwill with a smoke-like aura and can ultimately command the hearts of an entire country. It takes time, but once successful, the approval rate will be 100%. The world's securest dictatorship. But that's only if his political opponents are all moronic pushovers with no strategy. Now, he says that, but I'm not sure what political strategy would help a non-Nen awakened political opposition. In any case, how would Kakin fare with the party king Salé-salé at the helm? Not well. While his approval rating may at some point reach 100%, that would be simply because people would identify whatever idiotic thing he brought into law as the best move since the royals stopped executing commoners for merely having the gall to look at them, and not because they'd actually be good policies. Since he'd be surrounded by yes-men, there'd be no one to advise him on how to properly conduct himself, what policies and laws to enact, what alliances to forge, and so on. The country would slowly fall into ruin, and the people couldn't be happier. I also suspect he'd become quite famous rather quickly for his many extravagant parties, festivities, and so on. Kakin would fall apart, but it would fall apart partying. Now, this is supposing he isn't forcefully deposed, or even more likely, a political opponent who is either awakened to, or at least aware of Nen, hires someone to take control of and manipulate the lustful king of Gluttony. This is quite likely since, as I said, the GSB is far from discreet and the slow working nature of it would allow people more than enough time and opportunity to avoid getting infected once they've been made aware of it. Hell, a simple, decent face mask may be enough to completely counter its effects, let alone a proper gas mask. Supposing he wasn't already technically manipulating himself by literally getting high off of his own fumes, the hypothetical political opponent in question could very easily become a competent shadow monarch with King Salé-salé serving as his perfect puppet ruler. And that's 8th Prince Salé-salé done, in more ways than one. I know it's been a while since I last did a Prince video, but I was really hoping the manga would start back up by now, and I didn't want to do a video on a prince only for the info in it to be rendered out of date within a month. Now I'm kinda hoping for that. And B, the Momose video got a very low reception, so I thought people wouldn't be interested in the topic since I've already covered almost all of the more popular ones. We'll see. The plan is to cover 10th Prince Cacho, and then if the manga isn't reported to be back soon, I'll let the channel's members vote on which prince will be covered after that. Gee, I wonder who'll win. Speaking of, I'd very much like to thank the thinkers and overthinkers for not only going the extra mile in supporting the channel, but also sticking with me during this content drought. December was a bit hectic for me. As always, thank you very much for watching. Your feedback is always appreciated. Subscribe if you'd like more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one.